Before history remembers names, it remembers blood. Before empires rise or fall, there is always a moment of silence when the world waits to see who will survive. In 1571, that silence broke over the Mediterranean Sea, and what followed was not just a battle. It was the Battle of Lepanto. I still remember that morning as if it was carved into my mind. The sea was unusually calm, too calm. There was no wind strong enough to justify what we all felt inside our chests. A strange silence stretched across the water as if the Mediterranean itself was holding its breath. I stood on the deck of our ship, gripping the wooden railing. Around me, men were preparing weapons, checking ropes, loading cannons. No one spoke much. Even the usual noise of sailors felt muted, like the world was trying not to disturb what was coming. Then I saw it. On the horizon, tiny shapes. At first I thought they were just shadows of waves, but they grew, slowly, relentlessly, until the truth became impossible to ignore. The Ottoman fleet, dozens, then hundreds of ships, moving with a kind of discipline that made my stomach tighten. They didn't rush. They didn't hesitate. They advanced like something inevitable. On the other side, a Holy League fleet gathered, Spain, Venice, the Papal States, and others, bound together by fear more than unity. We were many, but unity does not always mean strength. A bell rang across the deck. "Prepare yourselves!" the commander shouted. But what does one truly prepare for when facing something like that? I remember tightening my grip on my weapon so hard my fingers hurt. My mouth was dry. I tried to breathe slowly, but even the air felt heavy. And then it began. The first cannon fired from somewhere in the distance. A deep, violent sound rolled across the water, then another and another. Within moments, the sea exploded into chaos. Smoke rose so fast it swallowed the sky. The sunlight turned pale and broken, as if it no longer had the strength to reach us. Ships began to close in, crashing into each other with terrifying force. Wood splintered. Iron screamed. Men shouted prayers, orders, curses, everything blending into one endless noise. Our ship shook violently as we collided with another vessel. I stumbled, but stayed on my feet. Through the smoke, I saw them for the first time up close. Ottoman soldiers, not monsters, not legends, just men like us, breathing, bleeding, afraid. That realization hit harder than any cannonball. For a brief moment, our eyes met across the chaos. Then the world collapsed again into violence. I don't know how long the battle lasted. Time stopped existing out there. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like a lifetime. At some point, the sea was no longer blue. It was black with smoke, red with wounds, and filled with broken wood and drifting silence between screams. I fought. I don't even remember every movement, only flashes, steel, fire, faces appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Then, slowly, the intensity began to fade. The cannon fire grew less frequent. The shouting turned distant. Ships that were locked together began to separate, not from order, but exhaustion. When it finally ended, there was no celebration, no clear victory in the air, only silence, a heavy, unbearable silence over a broken sea. We had survived Lepanto, but none of us had left it unchanged, and as I looked across the water, I understood something I would never forget. In war, there are no winners, only those who are still standing when it ends. I remember standing there long after the fighting had stopped. The sea was silent again, but it was not the same sea I had known before. Around me, broken ships drifted like empty memories. The cries were gone, replaced only by the sound of water moving through wreckage. We had survived, but it didn't feel like victory. As I looked across the horizon, I understood something I will never forget. The battle had ended, but it would never truly leave us. This battle is considered the last major and massive naval battle in world history in which galley ships, oared warships, faced each other. With this bloody clash, thousands of years of maritime tradition began to give way to sailing ships equipped with heavy cannons. It marks the symbolic end of an era, carrying a deep sense of historical tragedy and sorrow. Because the battle took place in a narrow gulf, the Gulf of Patras, the ships were locked together, using hooks and grappling lines, turning the sea into a floating land battlefield. Within just a few hours, approximately 40,000 to 50,000 people lost their lives. The sea was reportedly turned red with blood, and among hundreds of wrecked ships, thousands of wounded sailors were left waiting to be rescued. It is remembered as one of the most brutal and emotionally devastating naval encounters in history.